Hi, Mark. Thanks for coming today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good so far.
Good. Before we get started with the more in-depth part of the session, I just wanted to remind you that anything that you say is confidential in this meeting. But if you do say anything about harming yourself or wanting to harm someone else, I am required to mandated to report that. But anything else that you say is just between us, so feel free to share anything that you want. So what is the main reason you wanted to come today? What's going on?
Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my job situation. I've recently left my job in the corporate world and have started going to work for the church, so it's just kind of different. So,
What were you doing at your other job?
I was a manager in a airline engineering function. Had a department of 18 people that managed the maintenance program for our fleet of airplanes, and so I was responsible for the FAA approved maintenance program for the airline, which was good. I had a good group and all that kind of good stuff, but had decided a while back that I was really looking to do something different. Wanted to get out of the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted to do some work of significance. So started talking with the church about the possibility of joining the staff there. A position was coming available, and one thing led to another, and I ended up taking the job. So I took early retirement. I'm getting a pension of sorts and medical benefits, which is nice, and then I'm getting a salary from the church.
Wonderful. So what are you going to be doing now?
Well, my title is Director of Lay Ministries, and as the Director of Lay Ministries, my job basically is to connect our church members with opportunities for mission and service within the church. I'm also going to be doing some workshops to help people find their spiritual gifts, find out what their help them discern what their talents are, and all that kind of good stuff. Should we be concerned that the camera's that it's blank?
No, it's still green.
Okay, just checking.
So you're going from being a manager of all of these people to a more
a much less structured position,
right?
To be sure.
What are you looking forward to most about the difference between the two?
Well, I think I really like the fact that I feel like I'm using my talents for God's work, helping to connect people to ministry opportunities and helping further the kingdom of God in that way. I like having a little bit more flexibility with my schedule. It's a full-time position, but I work on Sunday mornings, so I can take Fridays off, and I work some evenings, and I'll do some workshops over the weekend. So they've made it clear to me that I can kind of do things as I want to, even if I'm doing some writing or whatever, reading. I can do that at home, and don't have to worry about coming in and punching a clock or anything like that. So that part of it, I really.
I'm sure. What are there any challenges from, in going from your corporate job to this job where you have a more or less structured? Are there any challenges that are going to come from that?
Oh, sure. Because in the corporate job, I knew what that there was a definitive, that we all had something we were working towards. So it was very the objectives were pretty defined, and and the procedures were pretty well in place. So that part of it was pretty straightforward. And in the church job, there really isn't that. I mean, I took over some of the responsibilities from another staff member who moved on to another area of responsibility within the church. So I'm doing some of the stuff that she was doing, but the pastors and the executive director made it clear to me that they want me to kind of look at it with a new vision, a fresh approach, which is exciting, but at the same time it's a little challenging because I'm kind of creating something from scratch. So when you're creating something from scratch, what metrics do you use? How do you know when you're being successful?
Right.
You don't really have that. So
yeah. Are you looking at any big opportunities that are going to come from this, like being able to do it however you want, not being so structured on your?
Yeah, obviously I've got, I had been, the reason this kind of came up is that I had been doing some training. I had, before, as I was thinking of retirement, thinking of what I wanted to do in my second half, I had been doing some training in life coach certification, career coach certification, and I thought that was the path that I was going to be going down. So I had started some training along those lines, and I've taken some classes and I continue to take some classes. So, but along with that, that kind of, when the senior pastor, found out about that, I did a presentation on it at a men's group, and that kind of started our discussion. And the whole thing with coaching and with just, church work in general is that it's really, it can be sort of unstructured. You've got to kind of go with the flow and, in the people that you're talking to. And what I'm really wanting to do, and my vision is to have some workshops and some seminars to help people discover their gifts, through spiritual gift inventories and Myers-Briggs and Gallup Strengths Finder and the DISC profile, and then, and go from that to, what are people interested in, what excites them, what are their strengths, and trying to find the intersection of all of that, because my suspicion is that if you could find, God's wired us the way that He's wired us for a reason. God's given us our previous experiences that He's given us for a reason, and He wants us to use the way He's wired us and the families that we've gone into in our experiences in life, the good and the bad. I think those can be used to inform, what it is we're going to do, whether it's as a career or just as a, service opportunity.
So you like the idea of being able to point out help them pull out their interests and match them with
That's right.
different groups.
That's exactly right. Because I think, some people are made to be leaders, some people are made to be followers, some people are not followers, but behind the scenes workers. Right. And some people think that service is all about being out front. That's not necessarily the case. But if God's wired you to be a behind the scenes worker, or someone who is a support function, or more happy in support or whatever, then own that, embrace it, and find those opportunities for for using that, in whatever ways come across.
So do you think this new job will be more meaningful to you than the other job, or are they just
different? Engineering was something I kind of fell into. I didn't, when I was growing up, my dad was a child of the Depression, and we grew up poor, and I showed an aptitude for academics early in life. So, Dad was always on me to, make good grades and go to college and study a field that will allow you to make good money, because he didn't want my family to suffer or to struggle to make ends meet the way we did when I was growing up. So, because I was good at math and science, it kind of, engineering seemed to be, a fit, and I liked airplanes, or at least liked the idea of airplanes. So I became I studied engineering at Georgia Tech, but I found, honestly, going through the classes, that I could do it, but I really didn't like it, or I didn't get a lot of pleasure out of it, but I could do it, and it was a way to earn money. I was working my way through school at Delta Airlines, and then after a sojourn through graduate school, I went back to work for Delta full time, and then took a job with UPS here in Louisville, and the rest, as they say, is history. So I fell into engineering as a way to make money and to make ends meet, not so much out of a exploration of what God had necessarily gifted me for. Yeah, I was good at math and science, but I was good at other things too. And if I had it to do over again, I'm not sure I would have ended up doing the same thing. But having said that, I don't really begrudge that, because I think that I'm now able, in my second half career, with the lay ministry / life coaching that I'm planning on doing, I learned things, through my manager schools and everything that I went to at UPS that I would not have. Those are experiences that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I think that God's able to use that and is using that.
Right. So if you could do it all over again, you would. Do you think you would still do?
I don't know. That's actually a great question. I don't know if I would or not. Knowing what I know now, I don't know if I would. I would probably, if I were growing up in this day and age, I would probably try to find something early on in my life that was more a fit with my extroverted personality, as an example. But I don't know what that would have been. And but like I say, I don't begrudge anything that I went through, because I think it's all worked out the way it was supposed to.
Right.
Yep.
So let's look long term from this new job. In 25 years, what do you want people to say about your life? Like how do you want that to affect?
I hope that I'm able to have people say that I was a catalyst for inspiring people into a life of service for other people in the name of Christ. That's at the end of the day, I'm trying to multiply myself by equipping others to join me in God's work here on earth, whether it's working with folks in the west end of Louisville, whether it's doing mission trips to the Dominican Republic or to Africa, or going down to Appalachia and taking food, whatever it turns out to be. I can't do all those things myself, but if I can inspire others to have done that, then I feel like I will have achieved what God wanted me to achieve.
What strengths do you think you have that will help you get to that goal?
Well, according to the Gallup Strengths Finder, which I highly recommend for anybody, my top 5 strengths are positivity, connectedness, woo, ideation, and maximizer. So, I've always had a positive personality, but I really do think, my strength of ideation, which is to say, I'm good at coming up with ideas, looking at things with fresh eyes, different points of view. That's a gift that I have. The gift of woo, which is a funny name, but basically boils down to the ability to inspire others or to get others to kind of follow you in a path. Leading people by example, having them being drawn to charisma, for lack of a better term. That is, for better or for worse, that's a strength that I have. So I think I hopefully will be able to use that to inspire people to join me in going out and serving others.
So do you think that this new job with your church fits into your values more than
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I do, because, not that UPS didn't have corporate values, they did, but it was very much a results-oriented business, very, very bottom line, very, you had rules that you had to follow, which is understandable for a company of over 150,000 employees.
Of course.
But all that to say, I maybe would not have managed my department. Might have done things a little bit differently if it was Mark's Parcel Service as opposed to United Parcel Service. Right. But that's just the nature of my personality. However, I was able to, especially in my last position where I was given a great deal of autonomy, I was able to do a lot of things in the way that I felt like they needed to be done in terms of my relationship with my coworkers, my subordinates, and the flexibility I gave them to kind of do things, and not micromanaging them or anything like that, and it worked out very well for me. So all of that was good, but it certainly wasn't faith-based, and it wasn't it wasn't what this is. So.
Right. Do you think that the leadership at the church and you will mesh well, or is it?
Oh yeah, I do. Obviously, I've been a member of this church for almost 28 years, so I know them very well. They know me very well. So right. there's no surprises there. The interview was very interesting because they already knew
Right.
me, so I couldn't, for better or for worse, I wasn't going to be able to put up my best face forward in an interview process necessarily, because they'd seen me and, in all situations. That worked to my benefit, and maybe not in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, I have a very good. I love the vision of our church. I love the direction that our church has taken, especially in the last few years. Very much supportive of our overall mission, which is, to be living proof of God's love, one person at a time. That's our stated mission of our church, and I completely buy into that and want to be a part of that. So.
Do you think there are going to be any obstacles with going from the secular world to this faith-based church where you have the power to do whatever you want with this role?
Well, yeah, the biggest difference, I think, is I'm now working almost exclusively. I don't have anybody right now working for me, and all of my work will be done through volunteers and through the church members that will be working with me in service opportunities. And that's way different, because when I was a manager at UPS, I mean, the folks that worked for me, at the end of the day, had to follow my lead and had to do what I asked them to do, because if they didn't, there were consequences.
Right.
Potentially, career-threatening consequences. Mm-hmm. So you can make, in a corporate setting, you can make people do what you want to do. In a church setting or any type of volunteer setting, you can't. It's a big difference. And so there's a lot more persuasion, a lot more wooing, which again is why I think hopefully I'll be successful at it. But it will be a change, and I've only been in the position for a few weeks, but I'm already seeing where it's going to be. There will be issues where it's a challenge. So.
Does it make you nervous at all? Are you excited about it? Do you think people are gonna take to?
I don't get nervous all that much. I'm pretty confident, not in my own self, but I'm a great believer in God's providence, and I believe that God has led me to this position. So, because I believe that at the end of the day, God is going to grant me as long as I'm open to it and don't get too prideful about it. God will open the doors that need to be opened, and He'll give me the right words to say. And we'll have setbacks along the way, but we'll learn from them. And so I think it's going to be good.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Your perspective from going from 9 to 5 every day to going to church every day. Does it feel different? Like, are you more excited to, like, not just I'm going to work for a 9 to 5? Do you
no,
enjoy
it doesn't.
Getting up in the morning
So far, it doesn't really feel like a job.
Right.
It is, it's more of a vocation than it is a job, and so I feel like I'm excited to go. I'm excited to do. I'm still learning a lot. It's a large church, 3,000 members, so
wow.
There's a lot to learn. A lot of administrative things, and whenever you have a big church, you have to do things kind of like a business. So it's a little different than working in a little country church where it's just the pastor and maybe a secretary. So it's it's much different. And from that standpoint, it actually is kind of like a business, and we have to run it like a business. But at the same time, you understand that at the end of the day, it's God's business, not ours.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So looking long term again, like the big dream of this position, like if everything worked out exactly how you wanted it to, what would happen?
We would have a congregation that was known for their generosity of both their money. We are a wealthy congregation. Probably should have a bigger budget than we do, but that just comes with people buying in and understanding that whatever we make on this earth is at the end of the day not ours. But we would be known as a church that is generous in both our money and in our time in service in the world. Whether it's here in Louisville or anywhere outside the world. And in a perfect world, we're able to come up, we'll be able to come up with a format for mobilizing and training and equipping the congregation members and volunteers in such a way that we could then help train other churches to do the same, so that they are more successful in getting their members out into the world to do the same.
How do you think you would go about changing the members' perspectives to be more involved and more willing to donate their time and their money into?
It's a good question. I don't know. Right now, I'm doing some introductory Sunday school lessons, just sort of introducing the concept, and I'm basically basing it on Ephesians 2:10, which reads in the New International Version that God. I'm going to probably forget the exact words, but it's something to the effect of we're God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, the first part of that verse means that God has equipped us. We're His handiwork. So God's made us in a specific, with our, as we talked about before, our specific talents and gifts and experiences and all that kind of stuff. And because of that, God has prepared in advance good works for us to do. The good news of that is that we don't have to wonder whether or not God's got something for us to do. God's got something for us to do. The Bible tells us that God has something for us to do. Mm-hmm. Our job is to try to discern what that is. And in my view, I think one way to do that, and an effective way to do that, is to look inwardly and try to discern and discover how God has wired us, what excites us, what makes us tick, because God wouldn't have gone to all the time to make us the way He made us if He didn't want to use those specific personalities and strengths and talents and so forth for His service. Otherwise, why would He have done it?
Right.
God wouldn't have made LeBron James to be a great basketball player if He didn't mean for LeBron to play basketball. Now, basketball is probably not the end-all, be-all. Hopefully, he takes that pulpit and does something with it for good, mm-hmm. other than just making crap ton of money. Right.
So, your faith is obviously a huge part of your life. How do you think God has prepared you and led you for this position with what you've been through so far?
Oh, I mean, basically what we talked about. I grew up in a family that had God at the center. We were we were in church all the time. So I was born with that. I didn't never really had a crisis of faith from that standpoint. I had a crisis of money because we didn't have a lot of money growing up. So my first car was the 1971 Ford Maverick Grabber that we bought for $800. It wasn't a we didn't have a lot. So that has informed some of my propensities to try to be frugal and not go into debt, even though sometimes we do, and that kind of stuff. But God made me the way I am for a reason, and so I think that's what has led me to this position. Is that through my life, as a manager, I managed engineers who had no business being engineers. As an example, it was clear that they weren't good at their job, and it was very noticeable. They didn't perform well in their duties, which caused others to have to kind of pick up the slack for them, and it became a situation in some cases where there was some real danger of them losing their jobs because they were not good at what they were doing. It wasn't because they were bad human beings; it's because they weren't equipped for that. Mm-hmm. Through that whole, through situations like that, it became clear to me that we're not all wired the same. And one of the things that the company used to do is they used to have the idea that any manager could do any job anywhere. I don't believe that. I believe that, some people are made to be engineers, some people are made to be human resources people, and the two are not necessarily the same.
Right.
So, so that really is what started me along the whole line of thinking of, discovering your gifts, whether you call them spiritual gifts or personality type or Gallup strengths or, disc behavioral profiles, whatever. Discover those and then connect that. Don't waste your life doing a job that A, you're not good at, and B, you don't like. You should be doing what A, you're good at, and B, you like.
If you did what you liked, would you have done the engineering?
No, probably not. No, I was good at the engineering. Airline engineering I enjoyed because it really wasn't real engineering. Most of the engineering is done by Boeing and Airbus and the manufacturers. What the engineers do in the airlines is they basically maintain the airplanes. They do modifications to the airplanes, and a lot of my job is to take the manufacturer's instructions and kind of make them readable and understandable to the mechanic, or if I'm trying to sell a project, to the accounting department or the people who are controlling the purse strings. So that part of it I was good at. I was good at taking technical concepts and kind of making them simplified, so that lay people could understand them, and that's what really served me well as an engineer. So I could have done that again, but I would have never been able to just sit behind a drafting table and draw design widgets all day. That would have driven me nuts. That would not have lasted.
What would you, if you wouldn't have done that, what would you have wanted to do?
I don't know. Growing up, I thought I might want to be a lawyer, an attorney. I was a debater in high school. I could have done that, I think. I had toyed with, as I was graduating from college, I was toying with the idea of going into sales engineering, kind of doing marketing sales, which would have been sort of a, would have taken some of the technical knowledge that I had, but combined that with some of the more interpersonal skills that I thought that I had. And I might have been good at that, but I never found or was offered a job that I thought I would have wanted. So it never came to pass.
So since obviously sitting in a desk from 9 to 5 is not your thing, and this new job is not that, I think that there will be more opportunities for you to enjoy what you're doing and not feel like dreadful going to work every day.
That's right.
And being able to share what you believe without having to worry about the corporate world getting on you about it, and helping guide people but not being in charge of them.
Yep.
And that will bring you more,
I think so,
pleasure in the long run.
I think so.
Awesome. Is there any other... Did you have any questions that you wanted to talk about today?
I don't think so. This has been helpful. I appreciate the opportunity to, to kind of talk about some of these things. So.
Is there any goals that you want to set for the next time we meet, or how do you want to ease the transition from going to the corporate world to this new job?
The big thing that I need to work on is trying to figure out how we define success. I don't want it to be just, oh, Mark, you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. I want there to be some, and maybe this is the engineer in me, but I want there to be some metrics. I want to be able to say, yeah, I know I'm doing a good job because our volunteer rate has gone up by 50%. But to do that, there's some things in our church's internal database that I've got to get started because, they haven't captured a lot of that data. So part of what I'll be doing in the first 6 months to a year is try to set up the database so that we're able to capture some of those things so that we have those metrics that we can use. But that's the biggest thing, is to be able to, when somebody asks, well, what are you doing? Why is this worthwhile? I want to be able to have some objective facts to be able to show.
All right. So how about the goal for our next meeting could be, you could come up with 5, if you can't narrow it down, to what definitions of what you think success would be and how you would measure them, and then we can discuss how you think you could navigate those into your new position.
Sweet.
Awesome. All right. Well, I will see you 2 weeks probably. So I will see you then. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Bye.